Last night I got back from Seattle. We went to HCS to watch the announcement. We had a fantastic time, but now I'm back and so it's time to get to work. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go through basically all the footage that they released. We're going to go through it step by step and I'm going to point out every detail that I noticed. Once we're done with that, we are going to speak more candidly than I typically do. And what I mean by that is typically when I'm making a video I have a script. I'm reading a script that I prepared. When I'm done with our breakdown, I'm not going to be speaking from a script. I'm going to be speaking straight from the heart, as it were. Let's start off with the roundtable discussion, and then we're going to get into the 13-minute gameplay trailer that they released, and then we'll get into sort of my personal thoughts where I'm going to speak very candidly with you. And I'm going to do something here that I typically don't do, and that is be somewhat hostile and combative. Typically, I don't like to do that. One of my sort of founding philosophies was to try to be as positive as possible, and there are going to be some sections in that video where I'm not going to be doing that. Okay? First off, I want to thank one individual, someone who I was able to meet during our HCS trip, and that is Spartan John. You may know him as JS Lund on TikTok and Twitch. Now, this is someone who is genuinely just a really fantastic guy. He's a cosplayer. He streams Halo on Twitch pretty much every day of the week. I love him to death, and he was the one to convince me to actually go. So, Spartan John, this one's for you, buddy. So, let's start with the roundtable discussion. Immediately we see that the island has added rock structures and updated Forerunner architecture. There are changes to the HUD that gives us really good information. Notice the health bar is in the center and is not notched. To me this means there are probably no health packs, and we'll talk about that more later on. We also see the grenade in the bottom left, the ammo in the bottom right, and a radar at the top right. This can all be changed though, as we saw at the community stage. In the settings you can change all of that. We also see an objective marker. As this grunt is being shot, we clearly see that blood splatter has made its return to the game. Now this is something that I've seen a lot of people get really upset about, thinking that there's no blood, and I really don't know how you think that because they show it time and time again, and I'm going to point it out a lot in this video. Furthermore, on the community stage, they made it a point to show, by shooting a dead grunt, that there is blood splatter. Here is also where we see that the assault rifle has a 32-round magazine rather than its original 60-round magazine. Here the Warthog turret barrels glow as it heats up. This may indicate an overheating system, similar to how Reach had. Here we can see more blood splatter. We can see here that the glow of plasma travels down this hallway, meaning that each round has its own unique lighting effect, which I think is really cool and adds to the realism of the game. We can also see at the back of this hallway there is the original artwork that was in the original game. Here we see more blood splatter on the ground, and we also see that the methane tanks for the grunts will explode similar to how they did in Halo Reach. We also see an Elite's shield popping effect, and we also see that the plasma rifle has its overheating meter on the weapon itself. This is our first look at the Hunter, and later on in the presentation they showed how the individual worms move on the Hunter. We also see that the pistol has iron sights. It looks like the pistol has its original melee animation. Here we see more blood on the ground, and we also see that the radar has level indicators. Here we see that the Needler has an ammo counter on the weapon itself. Here is more Forerunner architecture as well as threshold in the background. We also see large Forerunner structures in the background upspin of the ring. We also see a clearly defined biome change. As they move on, we see more massive Forerunner structures on the ring itself. These could be levels later on, we're not quite sure, but I really love the detail. There is a fourth seat on the Warthog, so 4-man squads can play all together without leaving one person behind. Here we see Hunter blood sprayed when shot in the back. This is when they show that the energy sword is usable, as well as other weapons that I'll get into in a little bit. Here's another shot of the plasma light going down the hallway. Here we see a Flood combat form. This looks like a human that could be either in the level 343 Guilty Spark or the library based on the environment around it. Next they show us an infection form in a forest, so I'd say it's definitely in the level 343 Guilty Spark. We also see some sort of pink glowing plant. This could also be a Covenant dropship. I'm not quite sure. I can't get a clear picture here. I'm leaning more towards plant, however. They also show how there will be flood pure forms in the game, and on the second monitor there is some sort of skin texture, it looks like. This is our first indication that the cutscenes will not be one-to-one representations of what they were in Halo CE and how they were in Halo CEA. This is not a remaster, but a complete remake. Now, they have the original storyboards, which I think is really, really great, because this means they could possibly show us the true intention that Bungie wanted to make way back in 2001, but through constraints, either timing or personnel or technology, they weren't able to do exactly what they wanted to do, whereas now Halo Studios may be able to. The sounds of the game are also being completely remade. The original voice actors were brought in to re-record lines and create new lines, and the soundtrack has been remade as well. This game has 3 new missions that are supposed to, quote, serve as a prequel to the main course. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit later in my more candid section, but I have some theories of what these may be, what they definitely are not, and how those can play into the game. In this footage, we see that the shields have been broken, giving sparks on the Chief's body, as well as directional damage indicators both around the reticle and on the perimeter of the visor as well. Here we see more of the mission's opening cutscene with Foehammer shooting down a spirit. This is the footage of the worms I was talking about earlier. And now that concludes the reveal, the roundtable discussion that they had, and now we're going to go into the 13 minutes of gameplay that they showed, and I'll break down more details as we go through that. Right off the bat, we see that the Master Chief is standing up, and I really, really love this detail because his grip strength, as we know from Silent Storm, is stronger than the harnesses holding the other Marines down. And we see later on in this cutscene that the Marines are going to be shaken around, but the Chief is just stone still, which I think is awesome. Speaking of Marines, we get a little bit of their armor we can see here. Again, this is something that I'm going to speak of a little bit more candidly later on. As the ships pass, you can see a flock of birds in the background, as well as the updated Forerunner structures. Here the Marines shake around as the Pelican dodges plasma fire, and the Chief is stone still. And we also get a better look of the Marines' armor as well as their assault rifles. Here we see the change of Foehammer actually shooting down a Spirit dropship. And one thing that I noticed here, and this is a total nitpick, don't put a huge amount of stock into this, this is just something that I noticed that I thought I should mention, is that while these ships are passing by, you can see that the Master Chief's Pelican, Foehammer's Pelican, has its bay door open. However, you cannot see the Master Chief inside of it. That could just be a lighting effect, and then the other ship passes by and you can see that its door is closed. Definitely a nitpick, but something I noticed. This is our closest look at the Chief this far. I really love the details of the wear that the armor has already sustained at this point. Here we see a shield emitter, and another detail that I noticed is that there are no hexagons on the Master Chief's visor. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it seems like, at least at this point, that they're not throwing hexagons on everything. Here we see that they are showing the Pelican crash in this cutscene that was missing from the original cutscene, and Foehammer lowers the team down and she opens fire on a group of grunts, again showing that there is blood splatter, and as she's coming down you can see individual grains of sand being blown away by the Pelican's thrusters. As the Master Chief exits the Pelican, we can see his objective on his visor. We also see heat shimmers coming down from the Pelican's engines. On the assault rifle, we can see the 32 round capacity, a UNSC logo, as well as a Misria Armories logo and the compass. We also see this light that I'll talk about a little bit later. As he changes his pistol, we see the original racking animation, and he goes to scope in and we see the magnification count up and count down as he zooms in and out. Here we see sand getting kicked up and explosions on the beach. I'm not quite sure what this is at this point. I couldn't really tell with this footage, but to my best guess, this is probably a Pelican shooting down again. Again, we see methane tanks explode and blood splatters. We also see that when a bullet strikes a rock or a hard surface, it sparks. As the Master Chief reloads, we see the MA5 stamp on the assault rifle, as well as another Misria Armories logo. We also see the 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO ammunition stamp on the magazine, and I think that this stamp also says 7.62. And we also see a couple of switches on the weapon itself. Here we see sprint for the very first time in this game. This is something I'll talk about more when we get to the Candid section of this video. The elites here have some classic animations as well, and the grenade kicks up sand as it explodes. And if I'm not mistaken, it seems like the methane tank explosion actually kills this elite. It also seems that there are different animations based on which gun you're holding while you sprint. Now, this is true in every game, but something that I thought was odd is that he sprints with two hands while carrying the Magnum. However, he uses both hands on the plasma pistol. And here we see that the glorious noob combo is in full effect in this game. On the plasma pistol itself is a Covenant symbol. Now, this symbol generally is used as sort of a logo for the Covenant itself. Jackals dive away from grenades as usual, and as this jackal dies, you can sort of see its shield explode. We also see that a sliver of health has been taken out here, and we'll see some more health be taken out later on in this video, and I think that confirms that there are no health packs in this game. Here we have a fantastic view of Threshold as Foehammer delivers the Warthog, and her bay door is still open. As the Warthog hits the ground, we see its turret bounce with inertia. On the side of the Warthog is some sort of container, and on the turret is an ammo drum. We also see lights in the front, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time that a Warthog has side mirrors. It looks like the driver will have hit markers if the gunner scores a hit. We also see quite a bit of flashing on the turret as it shoots, and it also seems like the needles have some sort of tailing effect even after they've been shot. When in reverse, the Master Chief fully turns his body around to be able to see out of the back. There are also some bugs hovering around the trees here. Again, we see bullets spark as they strike hard surfaces. We also see a UNSC logo on the Warthog, as well as a UNSC stamp, and some text on the fender flare as well. Here again we see the lighting effects that each plasma round will have. Now, I'm not quite sure what the elite says here, but I think I make out the words "fire on me," indicating that the Covenant may speak some English in this game, and to confirm that, the elite then says, "Hostiles approach."
Covenant are putting up a real fight.
As the Chief's shields are recharging, we see hexagons. Halo fans love their doors, and this one has a really nice closing animation, and again we see blood splatter on the door itself. Once all of the enemies are cleared out here, one of the Marines yells, "Triggers down."
Man, triggers down!
It looks like the silly Halo physics are still here in full force, which is fantastic. This grunt gets shot from down below and he goes flying up into the air, and we see that the gunner continues to shoot these grunts as they're flying, and we see the blood splattering onto the cliff face. As the turret gunner shoots the armored portions of the hunter, sparks continue to fly. There is also blood splatter on the ground when he scores a hit on the fleshy parts. Plasma grenades also leave some residue on the ground after they explode. Here we see more hexagons when the shield breaks as this Warthog is thrown at the Master Chief by a hunter. We also see the fuel rod gun has some tailing effects, as well as some like leftover bits of propulsion or something, or propellant, left over on the ground after a hunter shoots his cannon. As the shield recharges, we can see it building on the Master Chief's hand with more hexagons. The Marine on the turret was firing into the wall of this Forerunner structure, and as we pass by it, we can see that there are dents left over where he shot. Here we get a close-up of the elite that was guarding the door. There are some symbols on his chest and some shield emitters all over him. We also see how his mandibles move, and this very, very clean undersuit. Here is our first look at a cloaked elite. We also see some very long tailing effects on the plasma fire. Here we see a grunt go absolutely sailing through the air. Now, the player here took a very strategic fall, something that you and I have done 100 times playing this mission. But since he took this fall, I take that to think that there is probably still fall damage in this game as there was in the original Halo CE. However, I think this fall would have probably still dinged up your shields as you fell, so maybe it's been turned down a little bit. That'll be interesting to see. The plasma rifle overheats here, and this is the animation to cool it down. The rocket launcher retains its spinning pickup animation and its reload animations. There you can see a rocket launcher being used on a hunter, and again we see the leftover fuel rod propellant after the hunter fires. I'd like to point your attention to the trigger finger of the Master Chief, and this light. Once the Chief takes his finger off the trigger, the light goes out, which I think is a really, really cool detail. Is it really a Kammyshep video if I didn't forget something? I can't believe I forget this, but Carol Raleigh, Fohammer, has a character model now wearing a classic Halo CE pilot's helmet. I've also seen some artwork of her without the helmet. And secondly, the Warthog tires are now airless tires. You can see the patterns interwoven through the tires to make them flexible and show that they don't have that they're not traditional inflatable tires like usual. Also, I stream a lot on Twitch, and you should come join the Patreon. Love you. There you go. That is all of the footage they have released at this point. There have been some other creators who were lucky enough to get some copies of this demo and have been able to play it, and they have their own footage. I highly recommend you go out and watch that as well. Now, here's where I'm going to do something that I generally don't do and generally don't like doing, where I'm going to be sort of combative here. I'm going to talk about some things that I generally don't want to talk about or don't like talking about, but I feel like it just needs to happen. I'm not a Halo news channel, right? I'm a Halo lore channel. Typically, I wouldn't do a video like this. But damn, there have been some dog shit takes in the last couple days. And so I'm going to talk about some of the changes here. I'm going to talk about what I think of them. I'm going to talk about some of the criticisms I've seen online, and how a lot of them are just complaining for the sake of complaining, which is one of the reasons why I started this channel, to have a Halo creator that doesn't complain for the sake of complaining. So first things first, one of the first things that I noticed was the 32 round magazine rather than the original 60. Now, that is really unfortunate, but really it probably just comes down to a balancing issue, right? The game has to be engaging and challenging and fun and enjoyable, but it also has to challenge you. There have to be sections in which you're not just mowing down grunts with 60 rounds, right? And so while I personally am not a huge fan of the change, when the game comes out, we'll play it and we'll see if it's fun or not. What I want you all to really remember here is that everyone who's making these videos telling you how awful this game is, they haven't played it. There have been a select few people who have played it, and so do your due diligence, and I think you'll be really surprised. That's another thing I really wanted to talk about in this video, and I was going to save it for the end, but I just brought it up. If someone's telling you that you're not a real Halo fan because you like this, or if someone's telling you that you're not a real Halo fan because you don't like this, both of them are wrong. You define your fandom for yourself. I'll be honest with you, I didn't want this game. I went to Seattle, sort of knowing that this was going to be the announcement. I think everyone was under the assumption that this was going to be the announcement. And if you watched my vlog video a couple days ago, you'll know what I said to Installation 00. What I said to my friends was that this is not what I wanted. I wanted the next thing. But after seeing it, I'm very excited for it, because it's more Halo. And if you're not excited about it, that's fine too. But one like or dislike doesn't determine your fandom. It doesn't define if you're a fan or not. And nobody gets to tell you if you're a fan or not. So if you're online and someone tells you that you're not a real Halo fan, just block that person, because that person has no real input or real criticism or real anything that is going to help you or educate you or anything like that. They're just trying to piss you off or rage bait you or get under your skin, so just block them. Next, I've seen a lot of complaints about the updated Forerunner architecture, and to me this really just comes down to graphical limitations, right? If you look at what the Silent Cartographer looked like way back then, it sort of had this texture to it that made it look like concrete, but the Pelican had the same texture, and obviously the Pelican's not concrete, so it just comes down to graphical limitations, and now we don't have that graphical limitation, and so they can make it look like it was supposed to look like back then, which is this Forerunner metal. Don't be fooled, right? Even though it looks like concrete in the original game, it's supposed to be metal. Coming to PlayStation. Now this is a really big one that I've seen a lot of people get really upset about, and it's something that I really, really, really do not understand whatsoever. This is a video game that I love. This is a video game that you probably love. And so what is the harm in more people being able to play it? We know that last week there were headlines about how Microsoft wants higher profit margins, higher than what is typically the industry standard. And one way that they're going to be able to do that with Halo is by selling it to another platform. There are more PlayStations in the world than Xboxes, if I'm not mistaken. And so Xbox just opened up a whole huge new market of people to sell this game to. And if they do not meet their sales goals or their sale threshold that they need to make, that is not a reality that you nor I want to live in, because that means probably no more Halo. And so opening this up to PlayStation gets more people into the franchise, which is a good thing. It'll make the studio more money, which is a good thing for the future of Halo. And it'll get more people just generally interested in Halo, which is something that people hate the Halo TV show, but it got people interested in Halo, which is a good thing. One thing I want to point out here is something that one of them said on that roundtable discussion, and that is that if we're going to make a change, the number one thing is to be true to the original. And so every change that I've talked about, every change that I'm going to talk about, these are all things that were talked about in meetings probably pretty extensively, and then the change was made with the original game in mind. So they're not just changing things for the sake of changing them, they're changing them because it either helps balance the game, makes the game more fun, makes the game more playable or enjoyable. Because remember, Bungie was working in a 2001 games studio. That is not a the limitations that Bungie was dealing with back then are not limitations that Halo Studios is dealing with now. 4-player co-op across platform, that's really amazing. So I play on PC, but I have friends who have Xboxes and I have friends who have PlayStations. And so for the first time I'm going to be able to play with people on PlayStation, PC, and Xbox at the same time across platform. Now what that makes me think is that if you have a PlayStation, you're probably going to have to create a Microsoft account to be able to do that. Hopefully we don't get into a Helldivers 2 situation where they rug pull. I don't think that would happen. But just something to mention. They're also bringing back a 2-player couch co-op split screen, something that I'll probably never do, but it's something I did religiously as a kid, so I'm really happy to see that come back. They've also added a 4th Warthog seat so that a 4-player squad can go through the missions without leaving one behind or without someone else having to get onto a new vehicle. We also know that there are multiple dozens of skulls, which to me is mind-blowing, right? I'm a Lasso guy, I've played them all on Lasso. He said that they don't think this one's possible, but I'm gonna do it. So I'm very interested to see what those skulls are, what those added skulls are, what the new skulls are, because if there are multiple dozens, that to me means that they're making new ones and they're gonna be out there and available for us to collect, which of course we're gonna do, and of course we're gonna make a video about it, and of course we're gonna do Lasso, and of course there are gonna be videos about it, so I'm very excited for that. Now, I said I would talk about this later, now is later, so the Energy Sword, the Fuel Rod Cannon, and the Sentinel Beam were 3 weapons in Halo CE that you could not use, and you are now able to use them in the new game. I think that's really amazing. There was no, bigger frustration for me playing Halo CE for the first time than seeing that sword fall to the ground and then disappear. It's like, come on. But now we're going to be able to use them. Another thing that I've seen a lot of criticism on is sprint being added to the game. This is an option. You can turn it off in the options. Another thing that I've seen a lot of people complain about is the marine armor, how it looks like infinite armor. And another thing I've been seeing people complain about is reused assets, which I'll talk about here in a second. But I think the Halo CE armor looks like Halo CE armor because it was made in 2001, and it's not 2001 anymore. Updating the armor to what it looks like now, keeping a consistent art style, I think is a good thing. And then the reusable assets thing, or the reused assets thing, I've seen a lot of people complain about reused assets. To me, I don't generally mind reused assets. To me, if you could, I've seen a lot of people complain about it with the Needler. If you can use the Halo Infinite Needler, that means you are not using resources, be that time, money, energy, on making a new one. And to me, that means you can save that time, money, energy to make something else in the game better. So to me, that's how I think about reused assets. And let's just be totally honest. Every video game company in the industry and the entire planet reuses assets. I also saw someone, this one's really funny, they said that Bungie would never reuse assets. Buddy, the entire back half of the game is just the front half in reverse. There is no greater user of reused assets than early Bungie. That's just how games were back then, right? So to say that Bungie would never do something when we have clear evidence of them doing it time and time again is really, really silly. Finally, let's talk about the new content, right? So we know that there are 3 new missions in this game that serve as a prequel to the main course, as they say. And they talk about how it's supposed to set up Johnson and Chief's relationship. Well, Johnson and Master Chief met in 2525 or 2526 during Silent Storm. That happens 27 years before this game. And so I think it would be really, really odd for them to go that far back. What I think is more likely is that these are either original stories that have not been shown in a book, or they are more recent stories like the orbital platform above Reach that John, Kelly, and James go to, and they meet, well, Master Chief meets Johnson there, and that's the first time they had seen each other in years and years and years. So that's what I think is probably more likely. I've seen some people say that it was confirmed that they said 2525. I haven't been able to see anything like that, or I haven't been able to find anything like that. I also haven't been able to find anything about them saying that it is confirmed to be right next to or right before Halo CE. I have seen a couple people say that these are going to be original stories, and so I'm very, very excited to see what that's about. So yeah, I think that is all I wanted to talk about today. Guys, this fandom has to just calm down every once in a while, man. Let's actually wait until the game comes out. It's gonna be day 1 on Game Pass. Play it on Game Pass and see if you like it or not. Or don't, and see if your favorite streamer likes it or not. Or see if your friends like it or not. But don't get online the moment it's announced and start screaming doomsday. I mean, we saw not even a full mission. We saw half of a mission, and we're saying that the game's dog shit because blank, 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 and blank. Like, come on, guys. There's so much to this project we don't know yet. And even the stuff that we did see, personally, I really, really liked and enjoyed. If you didn't, that doesn't make you not a fan. If you did like it, it doesn't make you not a fan. It just means that you have your own personal tastes and your own personal wants for what they're doing. Like I said, I don't know if I said it in this video, but in my vlog video I said that this isn't the game that I wanted. When I went to Seattle, I didn't want this game to be announced. I wanted it to be the next thing. I wanted it to be Halo 7. I wanted it to be the next Master Chief story. I didn't want to go backwards. But we've gone backwards. And that's not a terrible thing. One thing that I did see, and it's something that we speculated about while we were in Seattle, me and my friends, is what this game means for the studio. And an ex-Bungie employee weighed in on this on Twitter. I'll put a screenshot here because I took a screenshot of it. And basically, this is a layup for the team. Right? This is going to serve as a transition to the new engine. This is going to serve as creating new processes for the new engine because, you know, Halo Studios working in Unreal Engine is going to be different from any other studio working in Unreal Engine. And so they have to find their own flow. And going back to Halo CE is a good way to work on something that already has a foundation. They know what they're doing when they make Halo CE. They've done it twice now. And so now they can go forward and really work with this new engine and understand it. So this helps the staff. This helps them financially because, again, with Microsoft, they're wanting higher profit margins. This also gives them time to figure out what they want to do with the franchise going forward, which I think is all pretty good stuff. Now, one thing I will say, this game had better not be 70 or 80 bucks. I don't know what it will be, but in my opinion, this is a $40 or $50 game. We'll see what it actually is, but to me, I think $40 or $50 is the cap of what they should ask for it. If it's a $70 game, I think they're going to have a real problem on their hands. I think that's everything I wanted to say. So with that, I will leave you 3 long-form videos in like a week and a half. I don't know when this one's going to come out, but damn. With a whole Seattle trip in between. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. Check us out on Patreon. Check out Spartan John, JS Lund, and we'll see you in the next one, okay? I love you.